You're listening to a Brawl Network production. This is a podcast for the best fans in the NFL.
Are you in the Mafia?
Am I in the what?
It's time for a Bills Brawl podcast.
Second down and 7. Kelly with the time. Touchdown! Bill Brooks.
Allen. Deep shot. Touchdown! On the line to Stephon Diggs.
And Thurman breaking tackles at the 22. Inside the 10. Touchdown Buffalo.
Another episode of the Bills Brawl. I'm Mike Lindsley. You can hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. Had an opportunity to recap the Bills and Jets and look at the AFC playoff picture on the ML Sports Platter. Let's use a crossover episode for this Bills Brawl edition. Here is that show.
Before sunrise, Burn Dairy and Deli is preparing to fuel your day with hot coffee, donuts, muffins, breakfast sandwiches, and other morning staples. For lunch, grab a giant deli sandwich made the way you like it. Pizza, wings, wraps, or a fresh salad. Plus, something to wash it down. Then pick up dinner or a sweet treat and other pantry essentials. Now you can get your Burn Dairy and Deli favorites delivered with DoorDash. All day, every day, you can count on Burn Dairy and Deli. It's all good.
Hey guys, this is Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
It is another edition of the ML Sports Platter, all over the major platforms. Go ahead and download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by our great friends over at Welch & Company Jewelers, Stanley Law Offices, the Vince Aguirre Consulting Group, and Elevate Fitness Syracuse. Two great locations. If you're in and around Central New York, go to Elevate Fitness, man. The place is fantastic. They've got the hot tub. They've got the pool. They've got awesome machinery, terrific classes, and one-on-one training as well. Plus, there's a track that you can walk and run on, nice and soft, and calculate your miles and more. So head on over to Elevate Fitness on social media, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Grab your membership today. Two tremendous locations in Liverpool and in DeWitt. All right, let's break down the Bills beating the Jets in this podcast here on a Monday. And then I really want to kind of take a look at the AFC playoff picture as it stands right now. First things first, the Bills had to have this win. And I think they had to have this win in convincing fashion. But I think winning the game the way they did with, leaving no doubt to it, I think it was really needed for this team, considering what happened last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, just a complete and utter dumpster fire. And I think it's I think it was imperative. I do to win the game. When you think about what's really wild, right, is when you think about one game, because it's such a week-to-week league, right? We all know that. But when you think about one game, look at how everything changes. Everything changes. Last week, the Bills lose to the Jaguars, and a lot of people are jumping off the bandwagon. This team isn't good enough. They're not a Super Bowl contender. They're not... we shouldn't be taking them seriously. They have a ton of work to do. Holy cow, other teams, there's so many other teams that are better than them now. It was one game, it was 1 week, but it was such a bad loss. And, frankly, we'll get into this deeper later in the show, but, frankly, there is a lot of truth to it from the standings standpoint. It may cost Buffalo, in the end, home field advantage. I mean, that one loss may. It's just a place you don't want to be. I mean, it could cost them a seed. I mean, the Titans keep winning, but you had to kind of bury it, and the veterans on the team got together and said, look, we can't change last week. Let's go win this week. And it was a good message. It's a common message, and the Bills did exactly that. Clearly what the difference was for me this week, there were three main differences. One, they played the Jets, probably the worst defense in the NFL. I mean, you can argue maybe the Lions, you can argue a couple of others, but really the Jets are just, I mean, they're awful. I mean, they're awful defensively. They miss assignments all over the place. There's open players. So that's number one, is that, you know, and I'm not saying to, you know, to the point for the Bills and winning as well, they only play the Jets. Well, you can't say they only played so-and-so, or they only played so-and-so's offense, or they only played so-and-so's defense anymore, because Tampa Bay beat Washington yesterday. Washington beat Tampa Bay yesterday. It's still pretty early here on Monday morning. You know, the Lions tied the Steelers, right? The Jets beat the Titans earlier this year. The Jets beat the Bengals earlier this year. There have been games one after another where we've seen, you know, major upsets. We've seen teams go down. We've seen look at Kansas City struggling, although they looked pretty darn good last night on Sunday Night Football. You know, we've seen teams go down. So you have to win who you play against this week. You have to win that game against the team you play against. The Jets were that team. Their defense, though, is absolutely horrific. I will also note that offensive line-wise, the Bills, it was a complete 180. Now, look, some of that probably is playing against the New York Jets. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think the end-all, be-all is that Spencer Brown at right tackle, you move Darrell Williams back into the inside at right guard. That right side is so different when Spencer Brown is in there. I mean, look at the way he blocks and runs and his mechanics and the big body, and he shields guys off. His hands are fantastic. I mean, there were some plays where he just blew up the Jets on their side. I mean, he was really, really great. And so that was a big thing. And so from there, because you had a better, more cohesive offensive line, the Bills then could work Josh Allen off of play action quite a bit. They ran the football as well, which was a big deal. And that's the third thing that I'll get to, is that, you know, the line and the running game really allowed the Bills to be able to use more play action and more rollouts and create more time and space for Allen. And I think the Bills, despite the opponent, went back to a lot of the drawing board with the offensive playbook, right? I mean, this was a team that for a while you were looking at, and I'm not saying you had to do it all the time, but they used to do, you know, the tricky Bills stuff with Isaiah McKenzie, and even if you didn't give it to him, you faked the jet sweep and, you know, maybe handed the ball off, and it, you know, gave the defense a kind of a different look. Maybe the running back only gets 3-4 yards, but all of a sudden now they have to guess that McKenzie's going to get the ball in an end around. And then from there, you know, you roll out, fake it, and then throw it to the tight end who's, you know, maybe wide open for 5-10 yards, get a first down. Then you go into an 11 personnel shotgun, and then you throw the ball to Diggs for 15 to 20 yards. And then you go back to the run game, and then you go back to the run game again, and then you do a little play action. You hit a Stephon Diggs or whomever, maybe, you know, a scramble around, hit a Matt Breida in today's case, right? I mean, Matt Breida, I mean, there were two guys that basically, you know, weren't really, thoughts, you know, this season so far. You know, Matt Breida would be one of them, right? I mean, here's a guy who we had no idea if he was even going to play this year. You know, for a while with the injuries and with Moss and Singletary taking his load eventually, you know, would there be a situation where he would get some time? I thought it was a good offseason signing because I thought that he could fit in nicely with his speed and his overall game, his repertoire. And then F.A. Obata, a guy who they grabbed as defensive line help, really hadn't made any kind of a mark, hadn't gotten a lot of playing time. He was great against the Jets, 2 tackles, and he had a sack in this game. So those were 2 really impactful players for Buffalo, and I was really, really impressed with Josh Allen in this game. I know he threw the bad pick, but man, He had an 85.3 QBR, a 125.6 rating for 1 week at least. And again, week-to-week league like crazy. We can pack away the Josh Allen stinks narrative. We can pack that away. 21 of 28, 366 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, was able to utilize play action, rollouts, etc. off the running game. Bills receivers, he spread the wealth. This was a Stephon Diggs type of a game. He made some awesome catches, electric plays, had a big bomb at 57 yards, caught a pass for a touchdown. The first one was marked out of bounds. The second one was just an awesome teardropper from Allen to kind of like the left shoulder. Diggs grabs it. Bills win that battle. Stephon Diggs, 8 catches, 162, and 1 touchdown. I mean, that's a big-time day. Gabe Davis, 3 for 105. I don't understand why Gabe Davis hasn't been playing more this year. It has not made sense from day one for me. He was last year the player I predicted to be a breakout guy as a rookie. He, in fact, was that guy to a large degree. And this year he's been non-existent. Well, let's get to mid-November here, apparently, because that's when Gabe Davis is going to play more. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why he hasn't played more. He's another target. He's another big body. I thought he should have gotten a lot more targets the last couple of weeks, especially with the Dawson Knox situation in terms of the injury. Well, guess what? Finally, he gets major targets, major looks, 3 catches, 105 yards. Great day for Davis. Sanders, as my phone drops for the second time there. Emmanuel Sanders, 2 for 27. Matt Breida, 3 for 22. Dawson Knox, 1 for 17. Beasley, 2 for 15. Cole Beasley really hasn't been a factor in this Bills offense except for maybe a game or two where they've needed him in space. A lot of times where teams are covering, and we saw this happen against Miami, which was the blueprint for Jacksonville as well. But Jacksonville took Beasley away a lot more just because they have that much better of a defense. They cover the field more. They're better in coverage. They're way more aggressive and physical. But against the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago, the Dolphins were playing some cover 2 deep, and then they mixed that with some cover 0 and 1. And, the Bills then looked at it and were like, well, we're going to go underneath. And they just kept taking what the defense was giving them, and it was Allen to Beasley. It wasn't one of those games today. Because the Jets were in the secondary, they were so bad that you have to get to Diggs, you have to go deep, you've got to keep mixing things up. And I thought Dable had a really awesome game plan in terms of the offensive mixture. Like I said, they went to the drawing board a lot. From what's worked in the past last year. Again, every week isn't the same in sports, and certainly not in the NFL. It's different team, it's different stadium, it's sometimes a different time you play, sometimes a different time zone you play in, different coaching staff. It depends on who's injured, you and the opposition, depends on who's hot, who's not. There's so much that goes into the NFL and winning one game. It is absolutely mind-blowing. And so, we have to obviously keep everything within reason. Not too high, not too low, blah, blah, blah. But the Bills' offense was able to at least, I guess, capture some of the things that they have done last year on their way to the AFC Championship game offensively. In those high-scoring games, remember when they were scoring in the 30s and low 40s? We're waiting for Josh Allen's 300-yard game. Then it was 300 every time and 400. And so a lot of that offensive game plan I saw against the Jets. I saw jet sweeps. I saw play action. I saw utilizing the running game. I thought that they utilized the running game more than any of us could have predicted. I thought that they were going to use it. Again, I'm not a big rush more guy. There's a lot of people out there, well, you have to have 150 yards rushing in order to beat the Chiefs. Well, look, the evidence does speak for itself that teams that are able to run the football against Kansas City, they do have success and they have won. Teams that have beaten the Chiefs have been able to run the football. Teams that have been able to beat other teams have been able to run the football too. And again, I don't need 150 to 200 yards. 115, 20 to like 150, 60 is really good if you're doing it over the course of time. And that's what the Bills did. And by the way, they got 3 rushing touchdowns on Sunday, 139 total yards for this Bills outfit. So I was very impressed with the way Dable handled things, the way the offensive game plan was mixing and matching. There were jet sweeps, there was play action, there was rollout, there was balls going deep, balls going short. A lot of people got involved in the action. The Bills' hands were great in this one, wide receiver-wise. Gabe Davis making that crazy circus, tip catch along the sidelines was outstanding. And so the Bills win 45-17. Let's take a quick second to talk about a quick minute to talk about the Bills' defense. Before I do that, though, the ML Sports Platter is brought to you by Liverpool Physical Therapy and Brian Comboy of Mass Mutual New York State. Tax-efficient retirement planning. Go with Brian today at advisors.massmutual.com. That's advisors.massmutual.com. Brian Comboy is the official financial advisor of the ML Sports Platter. Big tip of the cap thank you as well to Heather Saxon of Hunt Real Estate. She is a certified and licensed real estate person and the official real estate agent of the ML Sports Platter. And also a tip of the cap to Burn Dairy. Make sure you stop by Burn Dairy all across central New York. There's a new one opening up on Morgan Road as well in Liverpool. Should be, I think, this week or next week. Stop in, get your chocolate milk, all your grocery necessities. You can stop in. They've got that awesome cooler to the right. They have hot and cold food for your lunches and dinners. Just grab and go. A great beer selection and more at Burn Dairy all over central New York. And, of course, as you're on the road, pop in and get gas at Burn Dairy as well. And you can join their savings program and see how you can save. Their donuts are so good, too, at Burn Dairy. So stop by on your way to work or on your way home, whatever the case may be, at Burn Dairy, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. The defense was fantastic today. They were ferocious. I had brought it up before the Jets game. Let's bring the house. Let's not screw around here. And the Jets were just a total and utter disaster in terms of being able to handle that pressure. And we have seen Mike White, who a lot of people had already anointed going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame before this past weekend. We had seen him, despite having success in his game against the Bengals, I think it was a 400-yard game, and then throwing for nearly 400 in another game, despite the success that Mike White has shown and his ability to read defenses and, the confidence that he plays with, he has at times, in fact, many times, he has thrown the ball into dangerous territory. He's thrown it into muddy waters. He is throwing it into space where there isn't a lot of it. And the Bills pressuring and doing their thing created a lot of turnovers for this team. And I just thought from the beginning they really, really did a great job. Now, A.J. Klein was in for Tremaine Edmonds. A.J. Klein is normally a really, really bad coverage guy and a great run guy and even a pretty solid guy in terms of rushing the quarterback when they need him to be. He was outstanding in this football game. I mean, he covered well, and he had 7 total tackles, 6 were solo, and 2 were for a loss. So A.J. Klein came to play. He was terrific in this game. You had Jordan Poyer all over the place. I mean, this guy, him and Micah Hyde, they continue to be the best safety duo in the NFL. And they just keep going every single week. These guys do something. Fumble force, fumble recovery for Micah Hyde. Spectacular play. Spectacular. Jordan Poyer had 10 tackles in this game. 4 of them were solo. These two guys are just absolutely amazing. And by the way, all 5 turnovers were caused by the secondary because the other 4 turnovers were interceptions. Levi Wallace had 1. Taron Johnson had 1. Jordan Poyer had 1. Trey White had another one. Can you believe Trey White's numbers right now, ladies and gentlemen? The Bills are 9 games into this season, right? They're 9 games in. And guess what? This guy has absolutely, positively been just... You can't throw against him. I mean, you really can't. And while I understand that he, hasn't had, 15 interceptions or something, while a lot of the reason for that is because these defenses are electing not to throw Adam. And if you look at the numbers with Trey White, it's just solid across the board. It's cover corner. I don't know what the analytics are telling me about, the times they don't throw his way because he's a dominant number one cover corner. It's got to be pretty good. But, he's got a half sack this year. He has a pick. He has 22 tackles, 12 assisted. 22 solo tackles, 12 assisted, 34 total. I mean, he's playing at a very, very high level. And I think if teams threw at him more, I think Trey White would have more interceptions. They just don't throw it to his side. So the secondary was fantastic. One pick each for those four guys I mentioned: Wallace, Johnson, Poyer, White. Hyde had the forced fumble and the recovery. This Bills special team day was pretty good. I mean, Hack had a pretty good day. From the punting side, 2 for 78. Matt Hawk. Tyler Bass 1 for 1 with the field goals. It was a touchdown type of a day for the Buffalo Bills, though, and just a game, again, that they needed to have. I understand that it was a really, really bad team in the Jets losing to a really, really good team in the Buffalo Bills, but the Bills really needed to have this one. 45-17, they win. Now, what does that mean in the standings? Let's have a look at where things stand now. There were so many teams with 5 wins going into the week. Would teams separate themselves and get a 6th win and not be in that jumbled 5-win mess? Well, guess what? Vegas did not. Broncos did not. Chargers did not in the AFC West. That's all huge for the Bills. Chargers fall to the Vikings. Raiders lose to the Chiefs, which some Bills fans might go, oh, well, you're not supposed to cheer for Kansas City. No. And right now we are, because the Bills have the tiebreaker. Remember, they beat Kansas City. So the Bills are ahead of Kansas City in the AFC standings. The Chargers losing to the Vikings keeps them at 5. Vegas, again, we mentioned, losing to KC. And Denver losing to Philly. So all those 3 teams, they stay at 5 wins, and the Chiefs now go to 6 wins, but the Bills have 6, and so they have the tiebreak because they beat KC earlier in the year, right? 5-win teams, the Colts, they get to 5 wins. They were at 4, they get to 5. This is one of the hottest teams in football right now. They're playing really well, physical football. Jonathan Taylor is literally impossible to stop. He was great again yesterday in a win over the Jags, although the Jags hung in this one a little bit. 23-17, they beat the Jaguars. Don't look now. The Indianapolis Colts have won 4 of 5 and 5 of 7 after losing their first 3 games of the year to Seattle, LA Rams, and Tennessee, respectively. Oh, and by the way, the Colts head into Orchard Park to play the Bills this weekend. What an unbelievably enormous game this is between the Colts and the Bills. Tennessee is rolling. They're 8-2. They have really separated themselves. Without Derrick Henry, they've won a couple of big games. They won at the LA Rams. They beat the Saints yesterday. And so the Titans at 8-2 are the clear number 1 in the AFC. Doesn't mean it can't change, but right now they are. They also have a plus 46 point differential. And also, can we please make note of this? This is huge. The Titans' schedule is really, 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 really soft. Okay, it's really soft. It's pretty bad. When you look at this situation here, they play Houston at New England, will be tough, but then they have Jacksonville at Pitt, tough game, but then home for the Niners, Dolphins, and Texans. I mean, the Titans right now should solidify themselves as a number 1 seed. And because, again, back to that loss against the Jaguars, because the Bills lost that game, and frankly, because they lost the head-to-head to the Tennessee Titans as well when Josh Allen slipped near the goal line, those 2 games right there, to me, are the difference in the AFC standings between the Bills and the Titans. If the Bills beat the Titans and the Bills beat the Jaguars, the lowly Jaguars, the Bills right now are the team that's 8-1, actually. Even if you lose to the Titans and you're still within a game because you beat the Jags, okay. But you're now 2 games back with the Titans having that schedule. And the Bills got to deal with New England twice in December. Tough stuff. They got to deal with Tampa Bay. They got to deal with the Colts this weekend. They got to deal with the Saints on the road on Thanksgiving night. So There are way more tough games for Buffalo than the Tennessee Titans have, but we'll see what happens. The Titans, maybe they slip up somewhere like the Bills did against Jacksonville. All these other games, look, Baltimore took care of business for the majority of this year up until this past week. That was a big win for the Bills because the Ravens stayed at 6 wins by losing in awful fashion on Thursday Night Football, to the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens, for the most part, going up until this year, had been a team that you look at as a major a team that was going to be at the top of the AFC standings with Buffalo. Now they're 6-3 there. They're 2 games behind the Titans, and they look worse than the Bills do right now. So again, 1 week to the next week, let's see what happens here. But the Ravens losing was big for Buffalo as well. Pittsburgh tied Detroit. That's awful. That's terrible. That hurts the Steelers big time. There's no question about that. The Bengals, I mean, look at Cleveland losing to New England. Now, New England wins, and they're in the division with Buffalo, so it doesn't help the Bills in that regard. But if the Bills can just keep staying ahead of New England, it won't matter. They can handle their own thing there. I almost think that if Buffalo can kind of control their own destiny in the AFC East and stay ahead of New England, clearly, obviously, beating them twice would help. But New England beating Cleveland kind of indirectly helps the Bills a little bit because it keeps the Browns now at 5 wins, and they're now 500, and they've dropped significantly in the standings. They've lost 3 in a row. You look at Cleveland right now, and, they're kind of irrelevant here, right? I mean, now that they've lost, they're kind of out of the playoff picture. Again, a lot can change here. I'm sorry, they haven't lost 3 in a row. They've lost 2 of 3. Forgot that they went and thumped Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago. But Cleveland, they just don't really have a lot of answers right now. Offensively, they get rid of OBJ. Cleveland's better offensively without him. But boy, against the Patriots, it didn't matter who they had. They couldn't do anything against New England. This football team in Cleveland, they're swooning hard right now. They are nosediving. And that may get rid of a pesky wild card type of a team. That Patriot win over Cleveland, that benefits the Bills a little bit because it kind of leaves you with less teams to worry about. If Cleveland had won, the Patriots would still have 5 wins. They'd be like a game and a half behind, 2 games behind Buffalo, but still there, they're still there anyway. Cleveland losing puts them now a game behind the Bills and certainly at least in the win column, and it puts them 2 back in the loss column. So that's a major difference. That's a major swing there. And so you have a lot of advantages, a lot of benefits for the Bills this past week here in the NFL. I mean, they benefited from a lot of teams losing, a lot of teams screwing up, tying the Ravens down against the Dolphins, and then of course the situation happening with the Steelers tying the Lions and all the rest. And the Bengals stay at 5 wins because they didn't play. They had a bye week. So that's kind of a look at the AFC playoff picture right now. Still plenty of football left to play. Obviously, the Bills, with 9 games remaining, they've played 9 games. They have 8 games remaining. And, I still think that the number, has to be here. And I predicted this before they lost to the Jaguars. But I had predicted that if they could go 9-1, at worst case scenario, 8-2, that might be enough to lock up home field advantage, depending on what other teams do. Those 3 teams I was looking at, KC, because you can never count them out, Tennessee, and Baltimore. Well, now Baltimore, they've lost to Miami. Now they have 6 wins. The Bills, it looks like, are going to be able to maybe leapfrog them, right? I mean, if they keep winning, right? Tennessee, are they going to slow up sometime soon? I don't know. If the Bills can stay, let's say the Chiefs get red hot here, win the division, which I actually think the KC Chiefs are going to win the division and be probably I would think maybe even like a 3 seed, right? 3 or a 4, because this is the part of the NFL season. You're divvied up into 4 sections. This is the part where you start to see pretender, contender, and kind of where people fit, and then that back end last 4 games, 3-4 games are solidifying position of who you are. And I think right now the Bills, stay neck and neck with KC, but ahead of everybody else as well. You have the tiebreak against KC. I'm just interested to see if Tennessee will slip up. The Bills have the Colts this weekend. Then it's at New Orleans, New England, Tampa Bay on the road. That's 4 really hard games. Carolina at home should be a win, although Carolina looked unbelievable with Cam Newton back on Sunday against Arizona. Then they go at New England, really tough game. Atlanta and the Jets back end should be wins. The Bills, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It might be hard to go 7-1 here the rest of the way. If they can go 6-2, that puts them at 12-5. I don't think that's going to be enough to get home field advantage, and therefore the loss against the Jaguars specifically, maybe even the Titans one, depending on what Tennessee does, that one game or two games will cost the Bills home field. If they can win, if they can only lose one more the rest of the way, 7-1 now, maybe it's a different 13-4. If you win out somehow, forget about it. If you win out, 8-0 the rest of the way at 14-3, home field becomes a pretty good chance. But again, Tennessee looking like they can finish 14th, they'll have the tiebreaker, at 14-3. So we'll see what happens. But the Bills did what they had to do on Sunday against the Jets, and certainly they got some breaks in the AFC along the way as well. Mike Lindsley with you. It's an ML Sports Platter episode. Thanks for listening all over the major platforms. We are brought to you by the Allen Angus Pub, home of the best darn Angus burger in town. Before and after all of the events in Central New York, stop by. Syracuse basketball, Crunch hockey, concerts, and more. The Allen Angus Pub, they have great burgers, awesome wraps, and, of course, terrific beers on tap and in the bottle and can as well. And don't forget to ask about their French onion soup homemade, a lot of their different creations they have. Their haddock is delicious, awesome entrees, fresh salads, terrific place to be. The Allen Angus Pub, Harrison Street in downtown Syracuse. Allen Angus Pub, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Tip of the cap, thank you as well to your State Farm agent, Matt Graham, Barks and Rec Doggy Daycare, the Syracuse Fitness Store, and Stanley Law Offices. Stanley Law Office is a title sponsor of the ML Sports Platter. Together, they'll work to get you the maximum award. Thanks again for listening. I'm on Twitter at Mike L. Sports. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.